My father and his family, so his two brothers and his mother and father, came on a boat called the Beaver after World War II, and they came to Canada, and they settled in Toronto. And as my father got older, for some reason, he started, how the family story goes is all of a sudden he started listening to Spanish language tapes in his room. And people kept on saying, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I don't know. I have this fascination with the Spanish language, and I've become fascinated with Mexico." So my father decided he wanted to go and visit Mexico. And it was during his visit, and it was over 5 to 6 weeks that he was visiting Mexico, that he met my mother in Mazatlan. And he ended up proposing to her, and they got married. And she came back to Canada. And so there begins the story of how it is I came to be. So it's funny, I always thought that, I asked my mom a lot about her questions. I said, the early years you had must have been very difficult. And she said to me, she says, well, I didn't understand when your grandparents spoke. So when my father's parents spoke, and when a lot of people would come over, just because my father's family was very well-to-do in Ukraine, and very well known there. And so many people had immigrated to Canada, so many people came to visit my grandparents. So my mom didn't understand the language, but she didn't seem fussed by it. Shortly after she came to Canada, she gave birth to my sister, my older sister. And so she was preoccupied with that, and she was happy. She loved being a mom. She loved Canada. She loved my dad. And there's no stories of anything dark. It would all seem to her like an interesting adventure. She was in a whole new culture. She was in touch with her family by telephone. And so I think she was just occupied with becoming settled in her new family and in her new country. Well, my mother never let anything stop her. So when, in the 70s, when she first started trying to find a job, everybody told her because her English wasn't very good, she would never find one. But my mother went out and she says, "I will find a job." And she went and found a job.
What job?
She ended up working at, there used to be a fish processing plant at Bathurst and DuPont. Mm-hmm. And so they hired her, and she loved the job. And then she moved to become a sous chef at one of our famous hotels called the Sutton Place Hotel. It existed a long time ago, but then she became a sous chef there. And so just subsequently, but every time someone told my mother that she couldn't do something, she would say, "Oh, okay, thanks for letting me know." And then she would go out and just do it. But that's always stuck with me. She never let anybody else tell her no, if it was something that she felt she wanted to do. So she gave me that. Hard work. She had a very hard work ethic. And so she was one of those remarkable women that did not need a lot of sleep. I can honestly say for about 15 years, she probably didn't get more than 4 to 5 hours of sleep. And I wouldn't say she felt like she was tortured for it. This was just her persona. She wanted to work. She wanted to make sure she had enough money to support her kids, that we can go on and be educated. So hard work and this fierce determination, and not sort of taking no was from my mother. And my father's family, they really put a big emphasis on education. And just because there were some healthcare issues in their family, never taking advantage, never not appreciating that we have health and that we live in a country that's free. And I think that is what I got from my father. I actually, when I was 10, there was a bit of a calling. I actually was watching TV, and my father would force me to watch the news, which I always found at first very boring. But then I became excited. I became interested in watching it. So there was something in me at that age when I was watching politics. I'd see a politician and I would say to myself, that's what I want to do. The thing is, when you come from we were a working class family, and I didn't have educated parents. So my mom wasn't educated, and neither was my father. I'm not sure if my father finished high school here. And so I remember thinking, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. So I remember thinking that, but life finds its way and you don't forget your dreams. And so I never forgot that was something that struck me from a very young age. And it stays with you. So your dreams kind of stayed with you. So that actually stayed with me. It's a good question. we're all blessed to live in this country because it's one of the few countries in the world. And I say this very genuinely, that it doesn't matter what your background is, what the color of your skin, what is your race or orientation or religion, you really can achieve your potential if you work hard and you take advantage of the opportunities before you. You have to take ownership of your life. It is very difficult to start a new life in this country. I grew up with my parents, very difficult. My father's family did not want to come to Canada. They had to come. They had lost everything in the war, everything. They were humiliated. They had lost all their money. They had lost their self-respect. They had lost everything. Family members, it was awful for them. So to come broken to this country, it was hard for them to get started. And then my mother lost her support as well. And I would say she had less to start back. Like she worked at a wonderful department store. And then when she was ready to find a job here, she found a job. But it's hard in a language that's not your own. It's hard to make friends and build your own network. It's hard to do that. And so from everybody, we're all immigrants to this country other than our Indigenous people. But I say to people, take advantage of the opportunity before you, and you have to work hard. This country will reward you if you work hard and you take advantage. There's a lot of opportunities, whether it's school, whether it's people that you meet, whether it's someone offers you an opportunity that you're not quite sure whether you'd be interested in that field, but you decide you want to try, but it helps you build a network. But you have to do that. I don't know if I'd say, I had mentors maybe later on in my whole process. When I was in grade school, I was a tomboy, so I liked playing a lot of sports, and my parents were Catholic. So I decided I was going to go to the Catholic high school 2 blocks away from my house. But when my principal of my grade school saw my application, he threw it in the garbage because he thought the school was not good enough for me. He thought, you are so smart, you should be going to much better school than what you've applied for. So someone like him actually interacted in my destiny. So someone was looking out for me. Was he a mentor? No, but was he looking out for me? Yes. And so he made sure I went to St. Joe's, which was known as, I think 85% of my graduating high school class ended up going on to university, which is a very high average even today. So, and that set me on a path and it was an all-girls school, which helped me to realize that I could do anything I wanted to, because we did everything at school. We were the captains of our, baseball teams and our soccer teams, and we were the people who ran the yearbook, and we were the people that ran the environment club. Like we ran everything at the schools. We were the top runners in our school, the top basketball players. Like we did everything at school. So being an all-girls school actually helped us help myself as a woman to believe that I could do anything. How did I start? Well, I started running for office actually when I was in high school. So I started running for the Girls Athletic Association, which is our sports club, and then Student Council. And then there was a Ontario Catholic Student Council. And so I ran to be the Toronto representative for that. So I always had it in me that I wanted to, take on leadership roles of things that I was interested in. And so that's how, I just started doing the things that I love doing. And then it became natural. And so soon as, the teachers and principals saw that I was engaged, then they started asking me to do some more things. And so I developed my leadership skills.
From Spanish side.
Well, you know what? First of all, I think that you have to understand that everybody has a cycle of how long it takes a particular culture to engage in larger society. So I'll give you an example. The Ukrainians actually started coming in the early 1800s, so in the early 1900s. They actually started settling the west part of Canada, okay? And then a second tranche came in the 1950s after World War I. The Latin Americans came later. My mom was one of the very, very early people. She wasn't the only ones. Most Latin Americans and Hispanic didn't come until the 70s and the 80s. So what happens is it takes time to actually establish, create a base, and then a foundation from which to sort of inspire future generations to be able to run companies and to become sort of leaders in all the different fields. And that's why I'm pointing out the top 10 Hispanic leaders. They're just one of the many groups that appreciates and honors the sort of Hispanic leaders in this country. But they are the ones that are starting to inspire the next generation of Hispanic leaders. Well, I think that as a national government right now, as you know, we have a prime minister who's a very proud feminist. And so he makes it a point of making sure that women are seen as leaders in our country. So he's made 50% of his cabinet as women. And the other thing we're doing is he's also provided instruction. We have something called appointments. So at the national level, there's people who run our Royal Canadian Mint, and there's people who run our National Capital Commission. There's people who run our national federal bodies, and they've also been tasked with trying to be as diverse as possible. So people like me, I'm constantly looking for Hispanic leaders who want to step up and apply for some of these positions at the national level, because through that they gain experience, they gain wisdom, and then they can not only mentor younger women, younger Hispanics, but I'd also say to you that they can sponsor them, because a lot of what's needed is more than just mentorship. You need to sponsor. You need to bring people along with you and be able to put your name beside them. You know what? Look, my mother, I think she's still in shock that I'm a politician, and I'm not quite sure. And when I say that it's a positive shock, I think because there's no one in our family that's actually a politician. But I think the best thing we can do for our kids is to inspire, to do everything we can to help them to do what it is that they want to do with their lives. Whether it is that they want to be a professional chef, whether they want to be a senior executive, or whether they want to be a politician or an artist. The best things we can do as a community, as a society, as parents, is actually help our kids to achieve their potential. That literally is the best thing we can do. You can't force people to be interested in politics, and you can't, politics, it took me 25 years to get to the position I'm in. I built up networks, I engaged in the policy making process at the political level. I helped on a number of campaigns. I built up my leadership skills. There's a lot that goes into building up your leadership skills, and then your life has to meet up with the moment that you're ready to enter politics. Because I'll tell you, politics is hard. It's hard whether you're a man or a woman. And there's a lot of stuff that they don't tell you. It's very expensive. You want to make sure that you actually have a means of actually being able to afford your life while you're running for politics. It took me 3 years to run for politics, and much of that time I couldn't work because a lot of my time had to be actually focused on this campaign. But people don't tell that to women. For men, it's a lot more, I can't explain it to you. It's a lot more, it's like inside baseball. They kind of already know this, and there's already ready support. But for women, we have to say it to ourselves, and then we have to actually ask for money and ask for support. And this is not an easy process to actually do. And it's hard, because I said to you, one of the things I learned about my mother, from my mother, is even when people told her no, she still persevered. The moment I said I want to run for politics, I can't tell you how many people called me to tell me that I shouldn't run, that I would lose, that I would embarrass my family, that I'll lose a lot of money. It would be a financial disaster for me. That's really hard, because already you're taking a big financial risk on yourself. You're already taking a lot of time off work, and then you have not a few people, but lots of people coming to you and trying to tell you that you will never, ever succeed. And you have to be able to withstand that. So it's a big psychological, pressure. So you build up your family, your team, your network, the people who believe in you. And that's a hard thing to do. And again, nobody talks about that. No one talks to you about the no's of when women decide that they are going to run. And I don't know whether it's just women or whether it's also for men. I can only speak to you from my own experience. Well, first, knock on wood. I'm running for re-election next year. I'd like to have at least 2 more terms. I'm in this not only because it's calling, it's because I really want to serve. And I think I do a very good job of serving the community. And so 4 years is too short to be able to make a significant impact. And so I hope to get the confidence of people once again, at least once, if not twice. Well, I come from the business world. I came from a working class family. I really did not want to be poor my whole life, so I wanted to make sure that I had business skills. And I will tell you, even for me now, I'm thinking about taking a coding course. I'm improving my languages, not only Spanish, but also French, but I'm constantly trying to improve.
And Portuguese too.
And Portuguese. I'm constantly trying to improve because in the world we're moving into, you constantly have to be upgrading your skills. It doesn't matter what your age is. The only way you will ever be able to access the best jobs is to constantly improve your skills. Yes. So that's an excellent question. So first, as I mentioned, we are moving to a low carbon economy. That means we want to get off of fossil fuels like oil, probably within about 30 years. We just know it's not going to happen overnight. You can't flip a switch. All of us drive cars. We need oil and gas for our energy uses, for our smartphones, for our TVs, for everything. So largely our society really still needs that. But we're moving to low carbon economy. And the federal government has put a lot of money into clean energy, into clean tech, into us transitioning into that. But while we're transitioning, for whatever oil we produce, we want to get the best market value. So right now, the oil that Alberta's producing is being sent down mostly to the United States. Because we're only sending it down to them, what they're doing is they're giving us less money than what the global market price is. So we get $15 billion less sending it to the United States than if we actually built a pipe and sent it to other markets like Asian markets, okay? So I don't like, in downtown Toronto, I can say I don't like that we're building another pipeline, but in the national interest, where we're trying to balance the interest of our overall economy in Canada with us making sure that we achieve our Paris Accord targets, in the national interest, I'm okay to support the purchase of the Kinder Morgan pipeline as long as it meets with all the criteria. That means Indigenous people continue to be engaged and involved. 43 Indigenous bands actually have approved the Kinder Morgan pipeline, just so you know. The Premier of British Columbia, what most opposed, he's not saying that carbon emissions will go up. That's not what he's saying. What he's worried about is an oil spill off the coast of British Columbia. The federal government has implemented the most advanced and sophisticated and well-resourced, so over $1 billion has been put into a fund for any remote oil spill that might actually happen. And so we're doing everything we can. So best-in-class pipelines so that there's no breaks or leaks. We've put a best-in-class oil spill strategy just in case there might be spill, but we're hoping that there never will be one. And the Alberta Premier has put a cap on how much they can produce in terms of oil so that we meet with our Paris Accord targets. So we've put a lot of things, and we're investing in clean tech and green energy, and we're moving to a low carbon economy. It's just not going to happen overnight. And most of the Alberta economy does depend still on their resources. And we as a national government, we have to make decisions in the best interests of this country. And so for those, I understand why activists are against that, because everybody wants us to just shut down and not produce any more fossil fuels. The reality is, does everybody want to stop driving their cars, not use their smartphones, not use their TVs, not heat their homes? And right now, most people are saying, no, I really still want to do that. Until we start transitioning into a completely different way of living, we still have to produce some of our resources. And for whatever, so we're not producing any more. So that 15 billion I said that we're losing going to the US, we're not producing any more oil. All we're doing is we're redirecting it from the US and over to Asian markets. That's all we're doing. In 10 years, I want to believe that we're going to be the model community for diversity in the world. It's not easy to be a country where we have so much diversity, but I think that we can be a model in the world where so many different cultures and religions and races can live together in relative peace and harmony and craft a future together. So to me, that is what I see. And because I'm an environmentalist, I want to believe that we've achieved that low carbon economy that I dream about, where we're not really driving cars, but we have public transit that's easy for us to get around, and bikes that are, bike paths that are easy for us that are safe for us to sort of go on routes. So that's what I imagine in terms of our country.